It's James Harrison here to talk about the best drummer argument or whatever. And I'm going to go ahead and spill this now. I'm a little bit out of order. A lot of what I've been doing has been doing not the best, but the most influential to me in a time of my life. But I'm just going to spill this one now because I get asked this all the time. My favorite drummer is Steve Smith. Most of you, if you're not drummers, you're aware of him through Journey. And I first became aware of him through that as well. Now, when I say the best to me, he is one of the best. He's one of the greatest ever. He's musical, he's everything. And he's played every kind of genre there is. But the reason I jumped on board with Steve Smith had to do with the space that he was playing in his fills, the subtle little things that were going on underneath the main groove, and the sound of his drums. Those were the first three things that caught me. So the album, the first one that caught my attention was Captured. Not excuse me, that's a live album. I'll get to that in a minute. Evolution by Journey. And this first song, of course, was Love a Touch and Squeezing. And I just felt this infectious groove. God, God. And you listen close and you hear a little couple subtle things thrown in there now and then. But it was just really good. And the tom sound was incredible. I bought the album. And when I put that album and I heard this, I think the opening is called Majestic, and it goes into Too Late. And it has this fill. And it was like, the best way I can describe it is there's a little opening and there's a space for a fill. And he just does nothing but do, blop, blop. And I say blop, blop, meaning flamps. Okay? Do, blop, blop. See the spotlight turning red, and then again, little subtle things, but the sound was incredible. And then Just the Same Way You Love Me was on that record, and that's what a killer groove. And Loving You Is Easy, great little interchange between the bell and the snare. And anyway, just incredible drumming, a lot of subtlety things, but the space and the way he played the ballads kind of reminded me a little bit about Nigel Olsson. So I became attracted to that and kind of dove down that rabbit hole about Steve Smith, only to find out he played on a fusion album by Jean-Luc Ponty. Now, I had heard of Jean-Luc Ponty, but hadn't really bought anything. So I sought out the album. It's called Enigmatic Ocean. And again, the drum sound, the drumming, I could hear some of the same things he was applying with Journey, but of course, because it wasn't mainstream rock or pop, he was allowed a lot more freedom, and I was just blown away by the energy and again the sound and everything. And I was like, wow, this is something. And I started looking in magazines and everything and seeing pictures of his setup and all this kind of stuff. And a lot of what he would do when he would go to the ride cymbal, that hi-hat would be playing constant eighth notes. And not that he originated that, but I just started to notice a lot of that stuff more. And I thought, man, this is somebody I want to emulate. And I became a huge fan. I saw them live and was blown away. And I tried to emulate not only what I heard, the sound of his drums, but also the setup. I raised my ride cymbal up really high at the time and had the toms underneath it and sat low and held the stick on the left hand farther back in the grip. I had grown up with it being normal. I went back to this. I was really trying to get a big sound and emulating a lot of what I heard. And I just kept copying Steve Smith, and I stole 1,000 things. And he did an album with a guy named Tom Coster, and the album's called TC. If you could find it, it's amazing. Randy Jackson's playing bass on there. Again, across the board, amazing stuff, a lot of space, the sound of everything. Of course, his own Vital Information albums I became a huge fan of. All the stuff he did with Journey, became a huge fan of the ballads. I think that if you listen to Frontiers, it's really interesting to listen to the drive he plays with, but then you hear some of the ballad stuff and you listen closely what's going on between the notes, but it seems like a lot of space. It's just magical in my opinion. And eventually followed him into his jazz drumming with Steps Ahead and more. So I became a huge fan of Steve Smith and basically tried to get anything I could that he was on, be it videos, DVDs, albums, you name it. And I've got a ton of things that he's on. And now Steve has changed his playing style, his posture, his setup, and everything dramatically from where it was, even the way he hits the drums. But I've kind of always followed and listened to what he had to say and why he had to say it. So he's super influential in my life and in a lot of other drummers' lives. And so my favorite drummer is Steve Smith for that reason. When I played on a recording with Redstone, a band I used to be in, when there was a couple of ballads on this recording, and I was channeling Steve Smith in my mind. How would Steve Smith play this? And so the combination was James Harrison played it like this, influenced by Steve Smith playing it like this, or possibly playing like this. And that became a big thing about what I did. And of course, that band did a lot of Journey covers and stuff too. So I became a huge fan of Steve Smith, and still am to this day. And despite what he's doing, be it brushes, whatever, I like it. I think he's great. I think he's great at explaining things and whatnot. And I still am a huge fan. So when people say who's the best, I can't answer that because that's your opinion, but I can say one of the best, and certainly one of the most influential, if not the most influential, without being an actual teacher, Steve Smith. There you go.